I think it can be a cliche in songs, and yeah, you must surrender all. And I think you can't surrender without knowing the cost. It isn't a blanket, oh yeah, I'll just surrender everything. I think there's a weighing of what it means to surrender. Essentially, you're giving up your right to freedom in a sense of my freedom to choose what I want to do independently from God. So really what surrender is, it's giving up independence. Therefore, everything is done in relationship with God, in a relationship of intimacy with the heart of God. Therefore, you're choosing to align with the heart of God because you do trust and you do know he has the best for you and he is a good God. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is a mindset that says, well, we can make decisions for our own life like God does, and we can do it as well as God does. And you can see the world, how good that got us. Basically, humanistic solutions don't work. They just create more problems or different problems or changing problems. So in reality, for me, I got to the point where I would say the major area of surrender in my life was when God challenged me about my need to be aware and know what he was doing. Then I trusted him, and my identity was coming from what I was doing. So I surrendered that so that my identity would come from who he says I am. And I learned to trust even when I don't know and when I don't understand and when everything doesn't make sense and I still trust. And therefore I surrender my analytical approach to try and figure everything out rather than trusting him. So I surrender trying to figure it out myself. I surrender trying to work out my problems myself independently. Now, of course, in relationships, the Father may say to do something. You know, he may give me wisdom or insight or understanding to do something about a situation I'm in. It doesn't mean I sit back passively and do nothing, but I don't do anything independently. I don't think that in my own understanding that I can sort things out. But I had to come to that point because the soul likes to think that it can sort things out and has an independent view, which is a good view. And I think until you get to that point where your soul is in a place where, okay, I give up, doing this myself in my own way, then you can fully embrace the relationship which God offers, which enables us then to be able to do things in relationship with him, in partnership with him, in cooperation with him, in co-heirship with him. It's not that we do nothing. I think you can go from one extreme to the other. Okay, I'm completely independent, and then I'm completely passive and just let God do everything. And neither of those positions is what God wants. God wants a relationship. He wants us to do things together. So I'm sharing my concerns, issues that are in my life, the needs I may have. And then I'm not sitting back and saying, okay, God, sort it out. But I'm resting in the fact that I trust that he has the best for me. And then I'm listening to see if he wants me to do anything. And sometimes he might say, don't do anything. Wait for me. I'll do it for you. And we go to the throne of grace and we find grace and mercy in time of need. Now, sometimes mercy is, I've got absolutely no clue about anything, but his mercy will overcome my lack of knowledge, and he will enable that to be outworked in one way or another. Or his grace is his divine enabling power, which he enables me to be able to do whatever I need to do in a situation, but out of that relationship and out of that which he inspires, rather than out of my own, well, I can figure this out, I'll sort it out. I don't really need God here. Or, well, I'll go to God, but really I'm just, I know how to sort this out. And therefore, sometimes it's like surrender is not having presumptions or assumptions about a situation that I can fix it the same way I fixed it last time. because that would leave God out of the equation. Because, well, I know how to fix that. This is what happened last time. I can do that again. So it's always having that relationship, that intimacy of only doing what we see the Father doing, only expressing what's in the Father's heart. And that only comes from a face-to-face relationship. And some of the surrender is ego. You know, the need for me to prove myself, the need for me to, you know, be something or someone, that type of mindset, which, you know, is a soulish mindset, which comes from, you know, what the lie that mankind bought into. You can be like God, but you don't have to have God to do that. And that is a lie. And I think, you know, if I look back in my life, there are points where I would have said, I surrender, or Jesus, your Lord, which is another way of saying the same thing. It's basically accepting the lordship of Christ over us, and accepting then his lordship is always going to be good for us. But that in my past would have been a very passive, I don't know God that well, and I don't really understand God that well. So when it comes to accepting his lordship, it was a passive thing. I'm just expecting you to do it. Whereas the more I grew in my intimacy and knowledge of God, the more he equipped me as a son to mature and to operate as a son with abilities which I had no idea that I ever had years ago. But that doesn't mean I go out and use those abilities independently of him. Jesus had all the abilities that he needed, yet he only did what he saw the Father doing. And I think it's important that that's the outcome of our decision, you know, not to do things our own way. And I think I got to a point in my life when I was going through this process of saying, I don't want free will. You know, I don't want the ability to choose independence. Now, in a sense, that's a little bit of a cop-out, because that's a little bit like saying, well, I don't want to make a choice, so take away my choice. But now I see it as, no, I surrender my choice to the relationship I'm in, and I'm going to always refer to that relationship before I make a decision or a choice. But I can't say I don't want any choices, because that's just not practical. You know, and I knew the sentiment I meant was, I don't want to make independent choices, and I don't want free will, which is separate from you. So for me, that was part of my journey to come to the reality of seeing, well, who I am and the power that I have and the authority I have as a son of God, and the heavenly position I have as a son of God, and all of that, but only ever outwork that out of the Father's heart. Which is why, you know, when I engage, or when I engage in general, I lay down my agenda. I don't want to come into my relationship with God with an agenda that says I'm dictating what we're going to do today, what the agenda is today, and therefore you have to fit into my agenda. I come surrender my agenda to fit into his agenda. And sometimes we have a conversation, or we do something or go somewhere that seemingly is so far from anything I would have chosen to do in that situation. But I trust that God knows the way to lead me on the journey, and I don't have to try and set that direction or pace myself. You know, and I trust, just keep walking with him, and I will be walking in the right direction towards whatever's ahead along that direction. And then if he changes direction, that's because he knows that that's the best thing. You know, so surrender needs to be carefully understood, because it can mean the extreme of both ends of something which are wrong. But in the middle ground, I think it really does mean that I'm reliant for God on my relationship, but I'm not passive. I'm active in it. Hi, everyone. We're starting a Patreon page, patreon.com/freedomarc. And we would like to invite you to partner with us in taking the message of God's unconditional love, limitless grace, triumphant mercy to a bigger global audience.